Okay, so today we are going to be doing the reassembly of the rear suspension, and today I am ably assisted by my little assistant, the small loud thing.
Oi! I don't like being called the small loud thing.
Ignore that, of course she does.
No, I don't! It's annoying.
So, what we're going to do next, we've got to get those bushes out, and the way that I did this on the other side was just to drift it out with a socket, rest it on the bush and give it a good malleting. And hopefully it should come out. However, this one is getting a little bit more resistant, it would appear. So I'll go from the other side, see if that's any easier. Tighten her up. It came out pretty easy from the other side, but this side has got more corrosion on it and has generally been more difficult to do. No joy. So what we'll do is we'll get a smaller socket and just try and drift that bit of metal in the middle out. If not, it's going to have to be burning it out, but I'd rather not if I can avoid it. I did try and burn the other ones out, and to be honest it wasn't really that successful, but we'll see how we go. Yay, bingo. Job's a good one. Righty ho. So we're going to put the bushes into the suspension arm, into this wee fella here. So out of the bush kit we're using number 35A. Now what I found previously is that the trick is to use plenty of soap and water and a fairly large degree of patience. So we put plenty of soap on around the edge there, and then hopefully, fingers crossed, the bush will be able to slide into place. So get a bit of kitchen roll just to dry my fingers off. So we get it all sort of lined up, and then just gradually tighten her up in the vise. I need to try and get things reasonably level so that we can squeeze that into the bush there, into the suspension arm rather, squeeze the bush in. But what will tend to happen, as you can see there, is that it tends to ping itself out of place, and this is the real battle, is trying to keep it lined up and straight so that that doesn't happen. And the last time it did take me, oops, daisy, it's gone skating off. It did take me quite a few goes to be able to get that in. As you can imagine, this is now very slippery because of all that soap, which is kind of what we want, but it also makes it a bit of a pain to try and hold on to. So we're going to go again. You can see it's starting to push out there already. So I'll put a bit of pressure on there, keep on squeezing, and hopefully, fingers crossed, it will go in. There we go. Keep it turning, keep it turning, keep it turning, and then release. And that is in. Now we need to put the metal sleeve in. Which is this piece just here. We're going to push that through the hole there, okay? Quick pause for a little smoke. So we unwrap that. Again, line it all up. Open the jaws up a wee bit. Spot him in there. There we go. Do the jaws back up. Get it all lined up. There we go. And we're just pushing that in. Hopefully you can see that. Just pushing that home. That's it. And that's him in. Nice and easy. Okay, so we're going to do the same with the other side now. And that is ready to go back onto the vehicle. So you can just see the block in there, mounted on the top of the differential. It's a little bit unclear in the catalogue as to whether it goes on top of or underneath the spring, but it goes underneath. It's a very tight fit into the housing on the differential, and so what I had to do in the end was use a little bit of copper grease, and then I used 4 short bolts through the holes where the spring fastens down and screwed it down onto the differential case, and that held it really tightly in place. So that seems to be the solution to that. Now they do say you don't need to use longer studs if you're only using a 1/2 inch block, but I did find the studs didn't fit. So I've ordered the longer studs, which are the ones that you can see there. So if we look here now, you can see some of the studs are in, and they are actually too long for the cover to fit on. Now I've left 2 of them uncut because they go over where this hump is here. They go up into that, so that's not a problem. But the other 4 will all need to be trimmed down. I've done 1 so far, so I've got 3 more to go. 1 I've already done, so we're going to just go through how much I needed to take off and how I went about doing that. So what you can see here is 1 that I've already trimmed down, and then I've got the 2 that still need to be trimmed, and I've not fitted the one that I've trimmed down yet because I'm using that to size up where I need to trim for the others. What we do is put a couple of lock nuts on just to hold everything in place in the vise, and also to act as a marker. But the other reason for doing that is so that when I trim it off, it will do a little bit of damage to the threads, and this will just allow me to reconstitute the thread. As I undo the bolt, it'll just re-tap that thread as it comes off. And the reason I'm putting a lock nut on there is so that when it's in the vise and I start sawing away, it doesn't spin on itself. And then just to balance it up, we put 1 in the vise, 1 in the other end as well, just so that the vise can hold it nice and straight. Tighten the whole thing up, like so. And then trusty junior hacksaw, just make sure that's going to be, not sure that's really going to be short enough yet. Let's have a little look. That's the short one. Yeah, so that's actually going to be quite a lot longer than the one I've already cut, so we're going to just shorten that down a little bit further. It's come down about 1/2 inch, I suppose, 3/4 of an inch I've taken off. And that's enough to clear the spring cover, which was the problem with the originals, was that they didn't cover the spring cover, so you couldn't bolt them back up again. But it's not so much that it's going to foul on that cover. Trust your hacksaw, and then basically you're just cutting away like that. And it's fairly laborious, takes a while to get through. It'll give you a wrist like a 15-year-old schoolboy fan of Baywatch, but you just take your time and you'll get through them. I'll switch it off because it's not really terribly interesting to watch. So first job is to remove the old studs, which I put in and then found out were too short, so you need to take those out first of all. So I'm using the stud extractor again. I think I showed you this when I was doing the dismantling, but it's a very useful thing for getting studs out because it doesn't require a nut on the top. It goes over the top of the stud and it's loose, you have to hold it, and then it'll tighten up as you tightens up. As you screw it off, it'll tighten itself up. So I'll just Have a little look at that now. So we'll take this one out. So that goes over the top, hold it in place, screw it up until it grips, keep on holding it and just gradually screw that out. Because these have been out a couple of times now, they're not terribly tight, still too tight for me to pull it out there. Diddling, getting there slowly. Right, so that's that one out. Got the new one to go in. And we've just got a little blob of copper grease on there just to hold that, help that go in. There's a long thread and a short thread on these, and it's the short thread that's going to go into the differential casing. So we just need to locate the hole that it goes into. Here we go. Being very, very careful not to cross thread it. Screw it in as far as we can by hand. Then it's going to be the old lock nut trick again. So we put one on the top. Hence why we needed to sort those threads out. Another one on top of that. Got that for the socket. Holding the bottom nut in place. I'll tie the top one onto it to get it nice and tight. And that will then just screw that stud in till it's hand tight, because then we're going to need to torque it up with a torque wrench, and that goes at 28 to 30 pound-foot torque. I'm going to come back and torque those up later, so we can take that off for now because we'll need it for the other ones. Try not to drop the nut, which I lost one earlier on doing that. And you can see the cover now will fit over the top of those, nice and square. Okay, so I'll do the other two and we'll come back to that later. Right, so we've got 5 tightened up. The last one to do, I've got the lock nut on, and that was just fastened on by same old system. Stick a spanner on there, socket on the top, tighten it down onto the bottom. So now we're just going to torque it up with the torque wrench. Now, it gives the reading in the manual in pounds foot and something else, neither of which my torque wrench is calibrated. So there's a quick calculation to do, and there's a table in the included in the torque wrench which gives you the conversion factors. But it comes out about 38 Newton meters that this needs to be torqued down to. So we'll just tighten him up, which takes a little while because it's quite tight now already. Making sure that stud is still turning, and then we're not just screwing down the nuts there. Being a little bit careful just to keep the socket off of the bottom nut to avoid doing that. And it is tight to get all the way down. It's quite high torque, higher than I expected, and realistically higher than you could probably do with a ratchet, like a spanner like what I was using, a ratchet wrench like I was using previously. So important obviously that these are nice and tight. It's going to be embarrassing if your spring falls off going down the road. now, I think. Listening for the click. There we go. 2-inch clicks. We know what we're right about. Just swap that back onto the ratchet to undo that. Again, lock that off. We don't really want that to move at all because that will effectively undo the stud, so it won't be the correct torque. Let's just get in a position. This is quite tight to get off, so we need a good leverage. I'm sure the others weren't as tight as this. There we go. Take those off. Well, you'll see that there's a pattern to the holes in the top cover, so you can't get it on the wrong way around. And you can see where the line was, where the original, where the spring fitted. So I'm going to clean that up with a wire brush in a sec, just before we put that on. But you can see there, enough room on there to get new nylocks on. And we're going to use fresh nylock nuts, screw those down. I'm only going to do those up loosely at the moment until we get the springs attached onto the wheel end of the suspension, just so that can lift up and down if it needs to get itself properly located. But we will put the plate on so that it doesn't boing off the top, and that's that. So we're going to start off by trying to get the spring into the vertical mount. I had already put this in, but what then happened was that pushed the centre mount for the spring offline, and I couldn't get the bolts back in, or the studs back in. So I had to take it all apart again, get the spring properly lined up, which is a pain. Get the studs all properly lined up, and now I'm going to try and reassemble this, which is probably going to require a degree of brute force. So we'll see how we get on. Yep. Okay, so we need the torch onto here. We're going to put a little bit of soap on, just to lubricate everything up a little bit. A blob of soap, down around. Plenty of soapy stuff. Okay, right. Then we need to try and get that into there, which could be a little bit of a challenge.
With a crowbar.
Because it's quite tight.
Oof. Nearly.
Oh, fingers.
Yeah, try not to use your fingers, Daddy.
I'll try not to lose my fingers, more to the point.
Yeah, try not to. Oof. Nearly. What are you trying to do?
It needs to get into those bits there.
And next thing, you're using the bigger hammer. Oof. Oof.
Need to spread that a little bit. Try and get that side in.
Are you all right there?
Oh, time will tell. Don't want to damage that bush if I can avoid it.
How is it so strong?
Well, there's a pain in the bottom. Right, I need to try and somehow Leave that
Ow.
side in. Oh, sorry.
Oof.
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 That's got it.
Yay! Finally we did it.
Right, all we've got to do now is get everything properly lined up. Which in itself is a little bit of a challenge, so that we can get the bolt through.
Okay. Sounds easy.
Sounds easy.
Wait, actually, it
May
isn't.
not be quite so easy.
I was about to say.
Right. Let's have a look. So that's the bolt. At the moment, that spring is nowhere near. In the right place.
I'm actually already exhausted just from kneeling. So I'll just have to go on my knees.
Right.
I hope that's not damaging it.
Nah.
So what are we trying to do?
We're trying to get this bolt through this little hole here. But at the moment, it won't go because that's not lined up. Not go any further. Right, so what we're going to try and do now is relocate the spring in the upright. This is actually the second time I've done this, because the first time I managed to split one of the bushes. Now the difficulty that we've got is that the spring, the bit where the bush has to go in, is narrower than the width of the bush, so it won't go in. So what I've done is put a vise on the top here, and I'm using that as a spreader to widen those out, and then hopefully that spring will slide into there. So I'll spread that. And if we can just get the bush started, then we should be on our way. Get the old pry bar in there. Okay. That's it. Good. Okay, plenty of soap is the key, and a bit of lateral thinking. Right, so I'll just find the bolt and then we're going to pop it in. Right, so we've got the bolt that goes through and the nut for the end. Now the tricky bit is getting it in and having all this aligned. So just lift him up on the pry bar and take that off of there and have a look through the end to see how well lined up you are. It's kind of hard to tell with a pry bar in the way. Doesn't look too bad. Let's have another go. If I move the camera, you'll notice that on this side it's not quite so well lined up, and that's because this is twisted, so we've now got to try and twist him around to get the two sides lined up better so that I can bosh the rest of that bolt through. Now my recommendation is that you don't do what I've just done, which is forget to put your washer on the end of the bolt. washer goes on both sides. So I'm going to have to reinsert this. Up we go, which is a pain because it's not very easy to get in. Oops, bum, bum, ba dum, bum, bum. So, that's him. Tap him in. Okay, good. On the other side, just wrestle this around and get him lined up. Happy days. And then there's another washer, goes on this end, and then we tighten it all up. We're not going to fully tighten it at the moment. According to the book, you do that once the car's back on the ground and settle to its ride height once you get the wheels back on. So I'll just do this up sort of reasonably gently. And I'm just making sure that this one isn't turning on the other side, because otherwise you're not really doing very much, and it is. So what size are we there? 5/8. 5/8 I want. I can never work out these AF spanners, what's bigger than what. I kind of know that a 1/2 inch is bigger than a 1/4 inch, and that's about the limit of it really. Okay, final tightening of that will be once the road wheel's back on. Now for the other side, deep joy. Before we do the other side, cup of tea. Right, both sides are now on. The eye spring through the upright. I've reconnected the drive shafts. Now, a bit of a top tip with those. When you're trying to do this nuts up, what I found was that I needed to jack the hub up to take some of the strain off the drive shaft to be able to get the bolts through. If you find that you can't rotate the wheel to do the nuts up, it's probably because one of the bolts is snagging on the differential bolt, and you can't push them through unless you release that pressure on the drive shaft itself. So I just jacked that up, and then I was able to get it all reattached. So next we're going to do this bit here. Right, so now we've got to do the next bit, which is reattaching this part. Let's tip the camera down a bit. That's better. So we're reattaching this, so we're going to soap it up as we did before. Plenty of soap seems to help a lot. Dry the old hands off. And then I reckon we're going to have to use the jack to force this into place. God, yeah. It's going to be a bit of a battle, I think. Again, the slot it's got to go into is a little bit narrow, so let's get a bar in there, I think. See if we can just pull that apart a little bit. Right, let's see if we can spread that gap a little bit with a screwy driver. Doesn't really want to. That's got him. Right, so we're just going to try and get this one in here. Now you can see, possibly, just take the camera off here, that doesn't quite line up, and it's impossible to push that spring backwards to get that to line up. So what we're going to do is ratchet that back on this ratchet strap that I've got on here, which will pull the axle back into line. It's an old off-roader's trick when you break a spring to be able to put it back into place. There we go, you can see that axle just starting to move back into place there. There we go. Good. Okay, and we just need to slide the bolt in. Right, well, part of the way in. I'll just show you what I did for that. It occurred to me, why don't they make these bolts tapered? So that if you haven't got the hole exactly lined up, it'll push the bolt through and line the hole up. So then I decided to use one of the old bolts to make my own taper bolt. So I took the end down on the grinding wheel, and that tapped in, and from that I was then able to adjust the strap so that the bolt went in nice and straight. Of course the slight problem is getting this one out again, but that wasn't too much of a drama. And then the new one can drift in without damaging the threads, because you don't want to really whack it in case you damage something. So he's partially in, and I just need to get the rest of it. I need to get it through to the other side. So we'll get a lever in there. That just needs to go down slightly. There's not a huge amount of room. Okay. And just try and tap it through from the other side. And it's a case of looking into the hole and seeing where things are, and then just trying to adjust it accordingly. So that is tending to push that backwards. So if we tighten up the ratchet again, remember this from the other side, it was a bit of a pig to get that in, and then push him down. But what that does is effectively pushes the axle back, or it pushes the axle backwards, which is that way, and so I need to try and pull it back forwards again using this, which is on kind of the limit of its abilities now. But it's not got far to go. How are we doing? Need to try and get more downward push and less upward if we can. Yay, we're through. Okay, so washer on the end. Oh, that was a battle. Right, and a fresh nylock, which I seem to have mislaid. Grab another one out of the box. From my stash. There we go. Okay, so we've just got to tighten that up, release all of this guff. Come on. Job's good.